4 recruits thought they'd corner her, laughed and jeered, thinking she'd falter. 40 seconds passed. They learned too late. She wasn't just a recruit. She was fate. Before we dive into this incredible story of courage and skill, make sure to like this video, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our brave Army tales. Don't forget to tap the bell icon to get notified the moment our next story goes live. Now, let's jump into the action. The sun was just beginning to stretch across the horizon when Lieutenant Emily Harper arrived at Fort Camden, a modest but busy training base tucked on the outskirts of a small town in North Carolina. Birds called quietly from the trees lining the perimeter, their songs muffled by the distant hum of military trucks rolling along the gravel roads. For Emily, the early morning air carried a familiar mix of hope and tension. The hope of proving herself. The tension of knowing each day brought fresh challenges. She was not new to the world of military discipline. Years in special operations had taught her that strength wasn't just measured in muscle or speed, it was measured in patience, in the quiet moments of observation before action. But she was one of the few women on the base, and that fact alone painted a target on her back. Not overtly, not always maliciously, but the subtle glances, the whispering, the underestimation, it was all there. This morning, as she stepped into the mess hall, the familiar clatter of trays and voices greeted her. Recruits in various stages of uniform adjustment and morning chatter filled the long room, the smell of scrambled eggs and coffee thick in the air. Emily moved confidently toward her usual table near the far end, sliding into a seat with quiet ease. She was aware of the looks, the murmured comments, the weight of unspoken doubt that seemed to follow her. It was just after breakfast when the trouble found her. 4 recruits, a rowdy mix of brute strength and bravado, had decided that Emily, Harper, solitary, composed, and sharp-eyed, would make an ideal target for their amusement. They surrounded her table, blocking her path, leaning in with smirks that carried the arrogance of youth untested by true pressure. "Hey, what's the matter, Harper? Lost your way?" One of them jeered, a tall young man with a crooked smile. "Thought the SEALs were all tough guys. You're small." The words were meant to provoke, to ignite something in her that could be labeled weakness. Emily looked up at them, calm and steady. Her eyes met theirs evenly, unflinching. She didn't rise, didn't reach for a defensive posture. Instead, she took a slow sip of her coffee, letting the silence stretch. The pause made the recruits shuffle, exchange glances. "You gonna say something, or just sit there like a scared little girl?" Another piped up, a broad-shouldered recruit with a voice trying too hard to be commanding. Emily set her cup down and tilted her head slightly, a faint, controlled smile crossing her lips. "I'm listening," she said simply. Her tone carried no fear, no anger, only clarity. The room seemed to contract around them, the background noise fading as tension tightened like a drawn bowstring. They laughed, mocking, trying to break her composure. But Emily's quiet strength was a wall they couldn't scale. Her presence, calm and deliberate, was something they hadn't accounted for. "You think just because you're trained, you're untouchable?" The tallest one sneered. He leaned closer, his hands clenched into fists as though the threat of violence could force her to break. "I'm gonna show you." Before he could finish, Emily moved. The motion was fluid, almost imperceptible at first. In under 10 seconds, the situation that had seemed to promise chaos was over. Not with screaming, not with panic, but with efficiency and precision that spoke of years of disciplined training. The 4 recruits found themselves off balance, caught entirely off guard. Chairs tipped, trays clattered to the floor, and the room went silent. Emily stood, calm, collected. She did not raise her voice. She did not shout. She simply looked at them with a gaze that conveyed a quiet authority far beyond their understanding. "Anyone else?" she asked softly, her voice carrying through the mess hall with a weight that made the others shrink back. No one answered. The recruits were humiliated, but not just by the physical display. They were humiliated by the fact that they had misjudged her completely. They had assumed strength was a matter of size and noise, not skill and control, not patience and timing. Aftermath was swift. Whispers of what had happened spread through the base like wildfire. Emily returned to her seat, unbothered, finishing her meal as if nothing had occurred. Yet everyone knew that something had shifted. Respect, grudging and wary, began to replace the ridicule. The story of the mess hall incident would be repeated for weeks, each telling more cautious, more careful, more impressed than the last. Still, Emily knew that this was just the beginning. On a base like Fort Camden, tension never truly disappeared, and the world outside, the real world she had fought for and defended, would not wait for her to rest on her laurels. Every day demanded vigilance, emotional strength, and moral clarity, and she had plenty of all three. Later that day, as she walked the base, Emily reflected quietly on what had happened. She had been underestimated not because she was weak, but because the men around her had failed to see beyond appearances. That same lesson had guided her through years of operations where misjudgment could cost lives. Her heart carried the weight of those experiences, the memory of fallen comrades, and the understanding that true strength was a blend of courage, patience, and intellect. Even as she walked past other recruits, some glancing at her with a mix of awe and unease, she felt a subtle smile tug at her lips. The fight in the mess hall had been a test not of skill, but of perception. She had passed, and the respect that came afterward, though slow to build, would last far longer than a fleeting victory. As the day faded, Emily returned to her barracks, the sun setting over the horizon and painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought of the challenges ahead, the people who doubted her, the battles both literal and figurative that lay in wait. But she also thought of her own resolve, of the quiet power that came from experience, and the unshakable certainty that she could face whatever came next. That night, as the base quieted and the stars began to glimmer overhead, Emily prepared for rest. Her body ached from the morning's events, from long hours of training, from the unending demand for readiness. But her mind was alert, her spirit unbroken. The lesson of the day had been simple. Never underestimate someone who moves with purpose, who speaks with calm authority, who carries both strength and experience in equal measure. And in the coming days, that lesson would echo through Fort Camden, shaping not just the recruits who had tried to intimidate her, but the culture of respect and acknowledgement that she quietly, patiently demanded. Emily Harper lay awake that night, listening to the quiet hum of the bass. She thought not of revenge, but of understanding the truth that actions, not words, define the person. And as she drifted into sleep, she knew that the challenges ahead would be met with the same unwavering focus, the same quiet courage, and the same unshakable sense of justice that had carried her through everything else in life. The morning after the mess hall incident, the air at Fort Camden carried a different energy. It wasn't louder or more chaotic, but it felt charged, like the base itself had shifted. Word of what had happened spread quickly among the recruits, and even among some of the instructors. Emily Harper walked through the training grounds with quiet composure, her boots crunching over the gravel, her posture straight and unyielding. The glances she received were a mix of respect, curiosity, and lingering disbelief. Some tried to avoid eye contact, embarrassed by the memory of their own underestimation, while others looked at her as though they were trying to measure a force. Far beyond them, the 4 recruits who had cornered her in the mess hall were less confident now. They walked in a tight cluster, avoiding her gaze, muttering under their breath. Pride and embarrassment warred visibly on their faces. For them, the humiliation was real, not just in front of Emily, but in front of everyone who had heard the story. They had thought the day would be about asserting dominance, about marking a woman as less capable. Instead, they had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and humbled. Emily, however, felt no joy in their discomfort. Her strength was not in mockery or vengeance. It was in skill, in discipline, in measured action. She understood the value of control, the necessity of emotional balance. If she reacted with glee or scorn, she would have lost the true lesson, the power of silent authority. Her day began with standard drills, pushing her body through exercises that tested endurance, precision, and focus. As she ran through obstacle courses and completed timed exercises, she noticed subtle changes in the way others approached her. A few recruits asked questions respectfully, seeking guidance or advice. Others maintained cautious distance, wary of further misjudgment. Even the instructors seemed to watch her differently, now not with skepticism, but with acknowledgement that her presence demanded attention. Yet Emily's mind was not occupied with pride. She was aware that respect could be fleeting if not continually earned. True strength required ongoing demonstration, not just a single moment of dominance. She reminded herself of her own path, the years spent in rigorous training, the missions where lives depended on every decision, and the constant struggle to prove herself in a male-dominated world. Those experiences had forged her patience, her courage, and her understanding of human nature. Later in the afternoon, Emily found herself assigned to a team exercise with mixed recruits, including some who had witnessed the mess hall incident firsthand. The task was simple in concept, but demanding in execution. A simulated rescue operation involving navigation, tactical decision-making, and coordination under stress. From the beginning, it was clear that tensions lingered beneath the surface. Some recruits were hesitant to follow her lead, still adjusting to the idea that she was not only capable, but exceptionally competent. Emily noticed the micro-expressions, the flickers of doubt, the half-formed judgments, the internal struggle between ego and reason. She met each one with calm guidance, offering clear instructions, demonstrating techniques, and encouraging communication. Her approach was neither harsh nor condescending. It was firm, patient, and precise. As the exercise progressed, the team encountered a series of challenges designed to test their resilience and improvisation. A simulated hostile element was introduced, a group of trainees acting as opposition forces, attempting to disrupt the mission. Under pressure, the recruits began to falter. Panic, hesitation, and fear crept in, threatening the success of the exercise. Emily's response was immediate but controlled. She assessed the situation, identifying weaknesses and providing direct, concise instructions. She positioned herself where she could lead without dominating, allowing others to contribute while maintaining oversight. Her presence had a stabilizing effect, the kind of quiet authority that commanded attention without demanding it. By the end of the exercise, the team had successfully completed the mission. They had learned to operate cohesively, to trust in guidance, and to act decisively under pressure. The 4 recruits who had previously challenged her looked on with a mixture of awe and reluctant respect. Their initial arrogance had given way to recognition. They could no longer dismiss her as merely a woman or a recruit. Emily Harper was a leader, an expert, and a force that could not be ignored. After the exercise, the instructor in charge approached her quietly, offering a nod of acknowledgement. "Good work today, Harper," he said. "Not just for your skill, but for how you guided the team. That's the kind of leadership we need." Emily accepted the praise with a simple nod. She did not seek accolades. Her focus remained on competence, integrity, and the mission at hand. Yet inside, she felt the subtle satisfaction that comes from having her abilities recognized, validation not of ego, but of effort, discipline, and resilience. That evening, back in the barracks, the atmosphere was reflective. Recruits discussed the day's events quietly, the earlier tensions replaced by cautious camaraderie. Emily sat on her bunk, reviewing her notes and mentally preparing for the next day's training. She knew the journey was far from over. Every challenge, every interaction, every test was an opportunity to reinforce her presence, to demonstrate that strength was not about intimidation, but about skill, judgment, and emotional resilience. Even as she prepared for rest, Emily thought about the broader implications of what had happened. She had confronted arrogance and disrespect, but she had done so with composure, precision, and integrity. The lesson extended beyond the confines of the base. It was a reminder that true strength was recognized not through force alone, but through the combination of ability, patience, and moral clarity. Outside, the sky deepened into a rich indigo, stars emerging like quiet witnesses to the day's events. Emily's thoughts drifted briefly to home, to the people she had left behind to pursue her path, to the sacrifices required in service. She understood the cost of her choices, the weight of responsibility, and the necessity of unwavering focus. And she knew, without doubt, that the journey ahead would continue to test her in ways both expected and unforeseen. Yet, as she lay down to rest, Emily Harper felt prepared, not cocky, not arrogant, but ready. Ready to face doubt, to navigate challenges, to command respect without demanding it. She had earned her place, but more importantly, she had proven to herself that she could face adversity with grace, strength, and intelligence. And in the quiet of the barracks, that knowledge was enough to carry her forward. The following week at Fort Camden carried a quiet intensity. Training schedules had grown more demanding. Instructors scrutinized every move, and recruits pushed themselves to exhaustion. Emily Harper, however, remained a constant presence of calm determination. She approached each drill with the same measured precision, her movements deliberate, her mind focused. She had earned respect, but she knew that respect was fragile. It could be tested and lost with a single misstep. The 4 recruits who had cornered her in the mess hall lingered in the background of her awareness. They were no longer openly hostile, but their resentment and wounded pride were tangible. They avoided her when they could, but there were moments, brief, sharp, unavoidable, when their eyes met hers, charged with unspoken challenge. Emily didn't seek confrontation, but she recognized that tensions simmered beneath the surface. One afternoon, the base announced a new team exercise, a simulated search and rescue mission in the surrounding wooded terrain. Teams would navigate through difficult paths, identify injured casualties, and extract them safely to designated zones, all under timed conditions and while contending with unpredictable obstacles. It was the kind of exercise that revealed character as much as skill. Emily was paired with a group of recruits she hadn't worked closely with before. Some were eager and competent. Others were hesitant, uncertain of their abilities. The 4 troublemakers were assigned to a separate team, though Emily knew their paths would likely intersect in the expansive wooded area. The moment the exercise began, Emily moved with intent. She observed her teammates, recognizing strengths and weaknesses. She delegated tasks with clarity, guiding without dominating, offering encouragement while maintaining high standards. Her leadership style was subtle but effective. She let others act while ensuring the team moved cohesively, anticipating pitfalls before they happened. Meanwhile, the 4 recruits assigned to the other team encountered immediate difficulty. Overconfidence led them into mistakes, miscommunication caused confusion, and frustration began to mount. They struggled to navigate the terrain, their earlier bravado crumbling in the face of real challenges. Emily, aware of their presence nearby, maintained focus on her mission. She didn't interfere, but she silently assessed their missteps, noting how easily arrogance could be dismantled by experience and strategy. As the exercise progressed, an unexpected twist was introduced. Simulated hostile forces had to be avoided while carrying injured teammates, forcing quick decisions under pressure. Emily's team encountered one such obstacle, a narrow ravine with a precarious path. One recruit panicked, hesitating, unable to proceed. Emily stepped forward calmly, offering steady guidance and physical support without taking over completely. She demonstrated the correct technique, showing patience, control, and assurance. The team moved forward safely, each member's confidence strengthened by her measured approach. A few minutes later, the 4 recruits who had once mocked her found themselves in a dangerous situation. A sudden simulated landslide, a series of carefully placed obstacles and loose terrain trapped one of their teammates. Panic spread quickly. Their inexperience, combined with arrogance, left them paralyzed. Emily's team arrived nearby, having completed their extraction ahead of schedule. Observing the struggle, she did not intervene immediately. She understood the value of letting them face the consequences of their own decisions. But when it became clear that real harm, albeit simulated, was imminent, Emily acted. With calm precision, she assessed the situation, moved decisively, and provided guidance that allowed the trapped recruit to be safely removed. The 4 troublemakers were stunned, not just by her intervention, but by the efficiency, clarity, and authority with which she handled it. They had expected hesitation or panic, but instead, they witnessed control, experience, and unwavering composure. After the exercise, instructors praised Emily's team for their performance and her leadership. But the quietest recognition came from the 4 recruits she had bested in the mess hall. They no longer looked at her with disdain or challenge. Instead, there was a cautious, reluctant acknowledgement. They had learned again the hard way that skill, patience, and intelligence could not be underestimated. That evening, as the recruits returned to their barracks, Emily reflected on the day. The challenges had been physical, yes, but the lessons ran deeper. Leadership wasn't about dominating others. It was about guidance, patience, and moral clarity. True strength revealed itself not in bravado or aggression, but in calm action under pressure. She thought about her own journey, the battles fought in distant lands, the personal sacrifices made, the relentless pursuit of excellence. Each experience had shaped her, taught her the value of patience, the necessity of control, and the weight of responsibility. And now, on this small base in North Carolina, she was applying those lessons in ways that mattered just as much. As night settled over Fort Camden, Emily sat quietly outside the barracks. The stars were clear, distant, and steady, a reminder that even in moments of challenge and uncertainty, some truths remained constant. Strength, courage, and integrity were not fleeting. They endured silently, steadily, shaping the world in subtle but undeniable ways. The 4 recruits who had tried to intimidate her would carry their lessons forward. Their arrogance had been tempered, their respect earned, not through punishment, but through observation and experience. And Emily, ever vigilant, ever disciplined, knew that more challenges awaited, both from the world around her and from within. But she was ready. She had faced doubt, ridicule, and confrontation before, and each time she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. That night, she allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction, not for the humiliation of others, but for the quiet assurance that she had acted with integrity, skill, and unwavering courage. The journey continued, and Emily Harper would meet it as she always had, with quiet determination, unmatched expertise, and a heart resolute in this pursuit of justice and excellence. The days at Fort Camden had grown heavier. The sun beat down relentlessly, and the training schedules pushed the recruits to the edge of their endurance. Emily Harper, however, remained unshaken. Each challenge seemed designed not only to test physical ability, but to probe character, patience, and judgment. She approached every drill, every obstacle, with the same calm precision that had become her trademark. But the tension that simmered among the recruits was palpable. The 4 men who had previously mocked her were no longer openly aggressive, but their presence carried an undercurrent of resentment. They avoided direct confrontation, yet there was a quiet, dangerous determination in their eyes. Emily sensed it, the subtle ways they tried to undermine her moving last during exercises, questioning her instructions under their breath, testing the limits of her patience. One morning, the base announced a high-intensity exercise designed to simulate urban combat in a suburban setting. Recruits would navigate narrow streets, engage in mock confrontations, and extract hostages under the pressure of timed objectives. The exercise was realistic, demanding both physical skill and mental acuity. Emily's team was assigned a central district in the simulation, a sector filled with tight alleyways, abandoned buildings, and unpredictable obstacles. As the exercise began, Emily's team moved swiftly and efficiently. Her leadership was precise. She directed movements, anticipated hazards, and maintained a steady presence that calmed the more nervous recruits. Her experience shone in moments of chaos, her decisions measured and deliberate. Every recruit under her guidance began to perform beyond their previous limits, gaining confidence from her quiet authority. Meanwhile, the 4 recruits who had once tried to corner her were assigned to a separate sector. They quickly realized that the exercise demanded more than brute strength. Confusion set in as their plans unraveled, miscommunication, poor judgment, and panic slowing their progress. Their previous arrogance offered no advantage here, and frustration began to mount. Midway through the simulation, the scenario shifted unexpectedly. A hostile team moved into their path, forcing split-second decisions. Emily's team was alerted to a potential ambush. She assessed the situation calmly, directing her team to take strategic positions while minimizing risk. Her coordination was flawless, her instructions concise and clear. At the same time, the 4 troublemakers found themselves trapped in a simulated building with narrow exits and hostage recruits requiring extraction. Panic began to overwhelm them. They bickered, their earlier bravado replaced by fear and indecision. Emily's team, observing from a nearby vantage point, recognized the danger. Emily faced a choice: intervene and ensure safety, or allow them to face the consequences of their mistakes. She understood the lesson inherent in the moment. Arrogance without skill could have real consequences, even in simulation. But when it became evident that the situation risked injury, she acted. With methodical precision, she led her team to assist, demonstrating not only skill but compassion. In moments, the scenario was resolved. The 4 recruits were left shaken, humbled by the efficiency, control, and calm authority that Emily displayed. They had underestimated her yet again, and this time, the lesson cut deeper. After the exercise, instructors praised Emily's team for exemplary performance. Her ability to lead under pressure, maintain composure, and achieve results was acknowledged openly. But Emily's focus remained on her team's growth and learning, not on accolades. She had seen firsthand how humility could turn arrogance into respect, and she quietly noted the transformation in the 4 recruits who had challenged her. That evening, Emily reflected on the day's events. The urban combat simulation had tested more than physical skill. It had tested judgment, patience, and the capacity for controlled action under stress. She had witnessed firsthand how fear, arrogance, and ego could cloud decision-making, and how calm, disciplined leadership could turn chaos into success. As she walked back to her barracks, Emily considered the broader significance. Her role at Fort Camden wasn't just about demonstrating ability. It was about shaping character, influencing others, and setting a standard for conduct and professionalism. Every drill, every interaction, every decision contributed to the culture of respect and accountability that she hoped to foster. In the quiet of the barracks that night, Emily prepared for rest. The stars above Fort Camden were bright and steady, a reminder that despite the turbulence of daily challenges, certain truths remained constant. Strength was not measured by brute force, but by control, judgment, and integrity. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act decisively despite it. And respect, once earned through consistent action, could transform doubt into trust. The 4 recruits who had once tried to intimidate her had changed. Their arrogance had been tempered by experience, their respect earned not through force, but through observation. Emily Harper understood the lessons of patience and timing, the subtle ways in which influence could be exerted without aggression. She had proven time and again that true strength was a balance of skill, character, and moral clarity, and as she lay down to sleep, she felt prepared for the challenges ahead. The base would continue to test her physically, mentally, and emotionally, but she knew that her experience, discipline, and unwavering focus would guide her through. The journey was far from over. But Emily Harper had shown, in both small and significant ways, that underestimation was a dangerous mistake. Her quiet authority, her unwavering courage, and her moral clarity had not only earned her respect, they had set the stage for a reckoning that would leave a lasting impression on everyone at Fort Camden. The following morning, Fort Camden seemed unusually tense. A sudden announcement had spread through the base. A special evaluation drill was scheduled, one that would test not only physical skill, but leadership, decision-making, and moral judgment under high-pressure conditions. Every recruit would be monitored closely, and instructors would assess performance in a simulated real-world scenario. Emily Harper approached the drill with her usual calm, steady focus. She understood that this evaluation would be different. It wasn't simply another exercise to measure stamina or accuracy. It was a test of everything she represented: skill, patience, composure, and leadership. She had faced doubt, ridicule, and disrespect before, but this was an opportunity to demonstrate the full extent of her expertise. Her team was briefed on the scenario: a simulated hostile situation in a suburban area near the base, involving civilians in danger, unexpected threats, and complex obstacles. Each decision carried weight, requiring careful judgment. Emily listened intently, processing every detail, visualizing strategies, and anticipating challenges. She knew that mistakes could be costly, even in simulation. As the drill began, chaos erupted almost immediately. Simulated gunfire rang out. Alarms blared, and the streets filled with smoke from controlled pyrotechnics. Recruits reacted instinctively, some with hesitation, others with panic. Emily's team moved with cohesion, guided by her calm authority. She gave clear, concise instructions, delegating tasks while remaining aware of every element in the environment. Meanwhile, the 4 recruits who had once cornered her were assigned to another sector, encountering obstacles that tested both skill and judgment. They struggled initially, their earlier arrogance giving way to nervous energy. Emily observed them from a distance, aware that their success or failure would depend on whether they had truly internalized the lessons she had demonstrated. Midway through the exercise, an unexpected complication arose: a simulated hostage situation. Emily's team was nearest to the scene. Civilians, represented by instructors, were trapped in a building with limited exits, while opposing forces blocked the main paths. The tension was immediate, palpable, even in simulation. Emily assessed the situation swiftly. She identified multiple options, weighing risk versus reward, speed versus safety. She directed her team to secure perimeter positions while she maneuvered toward the building, signaling recruits to follow carefully. Her movements were precise, deliberate, and confident, conveying authority without aggression. Inside the building, the atmosphere was tense. The simulated hostages were anxious. The opposing recruits feigned threat effectively, and the space was confined, limiting options. Emily remained composed, instructing her team on positioning, entry methods, and communication protocols. Every action was calculated, every instruction clear. Her presence stabilized the environment, instilling confidence in those around her. The 4 recruits who had once mocked her arrived moments later, witnessing firsthand the effectiveness of Emily's approach. They saw how she moved with authority, how her team responded seamlessly, and how her calm judgment neutralized chaos. Their prior misconceptions were shattered skill and composure, not force or volume, defined true capability through a combination of strategy, precise action, and calm authority. Emily's team successfully completed the hostage extraction. The scenario concluded with all civilians safely removed and opposing forces contained. The instructors, observing closely, noted not only the success of the mission, but the leadership, patience, and moral clarity demonstrated throughout. Afterward, the 4 recruits approached her, humility evident in their posture. They spoke quietly, acknowledging their prior mistakes and expressing newfound respect. Emily accepted their words with the same grace that had guided her throughout her journey. She did not revel in their embarrassment. She recognized the growth that came from experience and reflection. Later that evening, as the base quieted and the stars emerged overhead, Emily reflected on the events of the day. The drill had tested not just skill but character, revealing the difference between arrogance and competence, panic and control, disrespect and earned recognition. She understood that leadership was not about dominance or intimidation. It was about guidance, patience, and moral clarity. Emily Harper had faced doubt, ridicule, and challenges that tested her physically, emotionally, and morally. She had responded with skill, composure, and integrity. And in doing so, she had transformed perceptions, earned respect, and demonstrated that true strength was measured not by size, noise, or aggression, but by calm authority, experience, and unwavering courage. Night, she allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction. The journey was not over, but she had proven, yet again, that underestimation was a mistake. The lessons she imparted would resonate beyond Fort Camden, shaping not only the recruits who had challenged her, but the culture of respect and accountability she quietly fostered. Emily lay down to rest, her body weary but her mind alert. The challenges ahead would demand focus, resilience, and unwavering dedication, but she knew she was prepared. Through every test, every confrontation, and every moment of doubt, she had remained true to her principles. Courage tempered by wisdom, skill balanced with patience, and strength guided by integrity. And as the night deepened, the quiet confidence of Emily Harper carried through the base, a subtle yet powerful reminder to all who had doubted her. True strength cannot be measured by appearances alone. The days following the evaluation drill at Fort Camden carried an unusual stillness. The base, usually buzzing with energy and chatter, seemed to pause, as if everyone was digesting what had happened. Emily Harper moved through the training grounds with her customary composure, aware that the respect she had earned was now solidified, though she remained humble. She carried herself not with arrogance, but with quiet authority. The 4 recruits who had once cornered her were now cautious and deferential. They avoided overt challenges, but Emily could sense that they were still grappling with pride and humility. She had learned long ago that respect is not fully earned through a single act. It must be reinforced, demonstrated, and modeled consistently. One afternoon, the base announced a final test for all recruits, a scenario designed to combine every skill learned over the past months, endurance, strategy, problem-solving, teamwork, and leadership under pressure. It would take place in a suburban-like mock village constructed on the outskirts of the training area. Every team would be evaluated individually and collectively, and the instructors emphasized that this drill would influence final evaluations. Emily's team approached the exercise with calm confidence. She briefed them carefully, reviewing objectives, assigning roles, and anticipating obstacles. Her team had grown stronger under her guidance, each member now more confident, competent, and cohesive. They trusted her judgment, and that trust amplified their performance. The simulation began with immediate challenges: simulated ambushes, barricaded streets, and injured civilians scattered throughout the village. Emily's approach was methodical. She navigated the streets with precision, communicating clearly and calmly with her team, making quick assessments and adjusting strategies as needed. Her calm authority was the anchor in a scenario designed to generate chaos. Meanwhile, the 4 troublemakers assigned to separate teams faced compounding difficulties. Their initial arrogance had been tempered, but their inexperience in prior mistakes left them struggling to keep pace. At one point, a miscalculated maneuver left one of their teammates trapped in a simulated hazard. They hesitated, uncertain how to respond. Emily noticed immediately. With deliberate clarity, she moved toward them, not to dominate or humiliate, but to guide. She provided concise instructions, helping them extract their teammate safely. They, 4 recruits, were shocked. Not only had she acted swiftly and effectively, but she had done so with patience and without judgment. The lesson was clear. True expertise was not about asserting dominance. It was about solving problems, protecting others, and maintaining composure under pressure. The rest of the exercise unfolded with escalating complexity. Emily's team performed flawlessly, navigating challenges, rescuing simulated civilians, and completing objectives efficiently. Every decision she made reflected experience, insight, and moral clarity. By contrast, the 4 recruits continued to struggle, learning once again the consequences of underestimation, lack of preparation, and impulsive action. At the conclusion of the drill, all teams returned to the central evaluation point. Instructors reviewed performance, highlighting strengths and weaknesses. Emily's team received the highest marks, not only for execution, but for leadership, coordination, and composure. The 4 recruits who had previously mocked her were present, visibly humbled, recognizing the gap between arrogance and true capability. When the evaluations concluded, the commanding officer addressed the gathered recruits. His voice was firm, yet respectful. This exercise wasn't just about skill or speed. It was about judgment, teamwork, and character. One recruit demonstrated exceptional leadership, calm under pressure, and the ability to elevate those around. That recruit is Emily Harper. A quiet murmur swept through the gathered recruits. Emily accepted the recognition with a humble nod. She did not boast or celebrate. Her satisfaction came from knowing she had guided, protected, and taught. Through her actions, the 4 recruits approached her afterward, this time with sincere acknowledgement. "We misjudged you," the tallest admitted. "We shouldn't have doubted your ability. We were wrong." Emily looked at them steadily. Respect isn't given lightly. It's earned through consistency, integrity, and action, she replied calmly. You have the opportunity now to learn from experience, not just from words. Use it wisely. The 4 recruits nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. They had learned humility, witnessed excellence, and recognized that strength went beyond physicality or bravado. It was rooted in skill, judgment, and moral clarity. In the days that followed, Fort Camden's atmosphere shifted subtly but permanently. Emily's actions had established a new standard, one where respect was tied to competence, integrity, and consistent leadership. Recruits who had once whispered doubts now sought guidance. Instructors observed her influence, noting the positive change she had fostered in the base's culture. Emily herself remained modest, continuing her training and leadership with the same quiet diligence. She knew the journey was ongoing. Challenges would always arise, and each day would demand focus, skill, and moral clarity. But she also knew that her efforts had made a lasting impact, not through confrontation or aggression, but through patience, discipline, and unwavering courage. One evening, as the sun set over Fort Camden, Emily stood alone on the training grounds. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gold, reflecting in the calm eyes of a soldier who had faced doubt, ridicule, and challenge, and emerged not only victorious but respected. She thought briefly of the recruits who had once tried to intimidate her, now transformed, humbled, and wiser. The lesson had been delivered without anger, without revenge, and without compromise. And in that quiet moment, Emily Harper understood the full measure of her journey. True strength is revealed not in confrontation, but in mastery, patience, and moral clarity. Respect is not demanded, it is earned. Courage is not just the absence of fear, it is acting with integrity when the world doubts you. As night fell and stars began to shimmer above the base, Emily turned toward the barracks. The path ahead was still long, still filled with challenges, but she walked it with confidence, knowing that her skill, strength, and character would continue to guide her, and that she had left an indelible mark on everyone who had witnessed her journey. Fort Camden was no longer just a training base. For those who had doubted, it had become a place of revelation. And for Emily Harper, it had become a testament to the power of courage, patience, and the quiet, unstoppable force of true expertise.